That yellow really brightens it up more.
It's looking good. Very artistic.
A widowed mom stood on her front porch, arms crossed, her eyes lingering on the man carefully rolling gray paint across the garage wall. The late afternoon sun inched lower, throwing long shadows on the driveway. His strokes were steady, deliberate, precise, almost meditative. She hadn't expected to be captivated by watching someone paint, but there was something about him. His focus, his posture, the calm confidence in each movement, that made her pause longer than she intended. Her name was Emily Harper, 32 years old, mother of one. She had spent the last 3 years raising her son alone after losing her husband to a sudden illness. Life since then had been a blur of bills, soccer practices, nights lying awake wondering how she'd do it all, and mornings where she forced a smile so her little boy wouldn't feel the absence as heavily as she did. Hiring someone to paint the garage wasn't about luxury. It was about letting one burden slide off her shoulders. The man on the ladder was Marcus Cole, a local contractor with a reputation for quality and honesty. At 36, he had served 8 years in the Army before returning home to build his own business. His skin glistened with sweat in the Arizona heat, his strong frame moving with effortless rhythm. He was used to people watching him work, but he could sense Emily's gaze held something different. Curiosity maybe, caution, perhaps even a hint of loneliness. Inside the house, 9-year-old Jacob sat by the window, chin resting on his folded arms. He wasn't watching the paint dry, he was watching the man doing it. Every brush of the roller fascinated him, every tool seemed like treasure. His father had been gone so long that Jacob sometimes struggled to remember what it felt like to have a man's presence in the house. Now, this stranger had appeared with buckets, brushes, and quiet strength, filling the yard with something Jacob didn't have words for but deeply felt. Emily walked down the steps, wiping her palms on her jeans. "How's it going out here?" she asked, her tone polite, measured. She had learned to be careful with her words, with how people perceived her, especially when a black man worked outside her home in a neighborhood that still whispered behind curtains. Marcus glanced down from the ladder, his voice low and steady. "Almost got this first coat done. The wall's soaking it up, though. Might take a second coat to really bring it out clean." Emily nodded, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Whatever you think's best. I want it to look fresh again. It hasn't been touched since we moved in, and, well, things got away from me." Marcus offered a small smile, sensing the weight behind her words. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he dipped his roller back into the tray and kept working. People carried stories in their silences, and he'd learned to respect that. From the window, Jacob called out, "Mom, can I go help him?" Emily's eyes widened. "Jacob, no, he's working." Marcus looked over his shoulder. "He can hand me tools if he wants, long as he listens and stays safe." Jacob's face lit up, and within seconds, the boy bounded outside, sneakers slapping the driveway. He stood near the paint buckets, wide-eyed. "What's this one for?" "That's primer," Marcus explained, crouching slightly to meet him at eye level. "It's like the foundation before the real color goes on. You ever color in a coloring book?" "Yeah," Jacob said eagerly. "Well, primer's like making sure the page is nice and clean before you use your crayons. Makes the colors pop." Jacob nodded with solemn understanding, as though Marcus had just revealed a great secret of the universe. Emily watched the interaction, her chest tightening. Her husband had always been patient with Jacob, answering questions with the same kind of care Marcus now gave. For a moment, the achy of memory clashed with the warmth of the present, leaving her both grateful and unsettled. Hours passed in easy rhythm. Marcus worked. Jacob shadowed him, and Emily found herself offering lemonade, making small conversation, even laughing at one of Marcus's dry jokes. For the first time in a long while, the yard didn't feel heavy with absence. It felt alive. As the sun dipped lower, Marcus cleaned his brushes and gathered his tools. "I'll let this coat dry overnight," he said, packing up. "Be back tomorrow to finish it." Jacob frowned. "You're coming back?" "Of course," Marcus replied. "A job's not done till it's done." Jacob hesitated, then blurted out, "Can you come even after the wall's done?" Emily froze, her cheeks flushing. "Jacob." But Marcus didn't laugh or look surprised. He just studied the boy for a long moment, then glanced at Emily, whose eyes softened despite herself. He crouched again, his voice gentle. "We'll see, kiddo. Let's finish this wall first." That night, after Jacob had gone to bed, Emily stood by the window again, staring at the painted wall gleaming faintly under the porch light. She thought about Marcus's steady hands, Jacob's laughter, the way the afternoon had felt almost normal. And she wondered what it would mean. In a world full of neighbors' stares and whispered judgments, if her son found comfort in the presence of a man who didn't look like his father. The question burned quietly in her mind, one she wouldn't yet dare to say aloud. Was it possible that help, companionship, maybe even love, had come rolling paint onto her garage wall? The next morning arrived with a brightness that seemed to match Jacob's mood. He rushed through breakfast, eager to know when Marcus would return. Emily tried to temper his excitement, reminding him it was just a job. But when Marcus's truck pulled into the driveway, Jacob bolted outside before she could stop him. Marcus climbed out, greeted by the boy's energy. "Good morning, assistant," he said with a grin, handing Jacob a clean rag. "Ready to work?" "Yeah," Jacob exclaimed, his voice carrying down the street. Emily followed more slowly, nerves prickling as she spotted a neighbor pausing mid-walk, eyeing the scene with thinly veiled curiosity. She forced a polite smile and turned back toward Marcus. He noticed the glance, the tension in her shoulders, but didn't comment. Instead, he set up his ladder and got back to work, as if painting walls was the only thing that mattered in the world. By midday, the wall was nearly complete. Jacob had been given the grand responsibility of holding brushes and mixing paint under Marcus's watchful eye. Emily brought out sandwiches, and the three of them sat together on the back porch, eating in comfortable quiet. It was Jacob who broke the silence, his voice small but certain. "Mom," he said, looking between her and Marcus, "do you think maybe he could be my dad?" The words hung in the warm air, heavier than any silence Emily had ever known. Her breath caught, her eyes darting to Marcus, whose steady expression masked the flicker of surprise in his eyes. She opened her mouth, searching for a response. But none came quickly enough, and in that pause, the fragile possibility of something new shimmered between them, as fragile and hopeful as wet paint drying in the sun. Emily's throat tightened, her sandwich forgotten on the plate in her lap. She turned toward Jacob, who sat swinging his legs off the porch step, eyes wide and innocent. He hadn't asked with hesitation. He had asked with the directness only a child could muster. Her heart ached at the yearning wrapped up in that single question. Marcus placed his sandwich down slowly, giving Jacob his full attention. "That's a big question, buddy," he said, his voice calm, steady. "Being a dad isn't just about showing up with paint brushes. It's about being there for all the hard days, and good ones too. That's not something you decide over lunch." He smiled gently, softening his words. "But I'll tell you this. I think your mom is doing an incredible job. You've got a lot to be proud of already." Jacob tilted his head, as though weighing the answer. He didn't look disappointed, just thoughtful, as if Marcus had given him something important to carry around for later. Emily swallowed hard, grateful for Marcus's tact, yet unsettled by how deeply her son's question had struck. She forced a laugh, brushing Jacob's hair back. "Eat your sandwich, sweetheart. Mister. Cole has a wall to finish." The afternoon carried on with the rhythmic scrape of rollers, the occasional clink of metal ladders, and Jacob's running commentary as he darted between his mother and Marcus. The wall transformed before their eyes, fading from its weathered, peeling state into a smooth expanse of fresh gray. Emily found herself admiring not just the work, but the man doing it. The patience with which he answered Jacob's endless questions, the quiet way he went about his craft, the steady strength he seemed to carry like a second skin. By late evening, the wall gleamed in its finished coat. Marcus stood back, arms crossed, surveying his work. Jacob clapped his hands in delight. "It looks brand new," he exclaimed. "Like we got a whole new house." "That's the idea," Marcus said, smiling faintly. He began to gather his tools, stacking buckets and wiping down brushes. Emily stepped forward, a mix of gratitude and hesitation in her chest. "You did a beautiful job. Really. Thank you." "Just doing my work, ma'am," he replied, slipping into the respectful address he used so naturally. But there was warmth in his eyes when he met hers. "I'll come by tomorrow to check for any touch-ups. Paint can surprise you when it dries." "Of course," she said, though part of her knew she wanted him to return for reasons that had nothing to do with touch-ups. That night, after Jacob was tucked into bed, Emily lingered in the kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at the darkened window. The words of her son echoed over and over. "Will you be my dad?" She pressed her palm to the glass, her reflection wavering in the pain. It wasn't just about filling a role. It was about opening a door she had locked long ago, out of fear, grief, and the judgment of others. Could she risk unlocking it? The following days wove into a quiet rhythm. Marcus returned, just as promised, checking the paint and fixing small imperfections only he seemed able to spot. Each visit stretched longer than the task required. An extra glass of iced tea, a conversation about Jacob's school project, laughter over a clumsy squirrel on the fence. Neighbors noticed. Emily saw the way curtains shifted, how conversations paused as she walked by with Marcus at her side. She told herself it didn't matter. Still, her stomach tightened every time she caught the disapproval in someone's eyes. One Saturday morning, Jacob tugged on her sleeve as she poured cereal. "Can Marcus come to my soccer game?" he asked, his voice brimming with hope. Emily hesitated, spoon hovering above the bowl. She pictured the field, the crowd of parents, the inevitable whispers. Yet when she looked into her son's eager face, she found herself nodding. "You can ask him." When Jacob sprinted outside later that day, Marcus was already unloading his tools. The boy blurted the invitation without preamble. Marcus raised his eyebrows, glancing toward Emily for confirmation. She offered a tentative smile, cheeks warm. "You don't have to," she said quickly. "It's just, he thought you might want to." Marcus rested his hand on his hip, studying them both. "Well, I don't usually turn down a good soccer game," he said. Jacob cheered, pumping his fist in triumph. That afternoon, Marcus sat beside Emily in the bleachers, their knees nearly touching. Parents turned their heads, subtle and not so subtle glances rippling through the crowd. Emily's pulse pounded, but when she looked at Marcus, she saw only calm patience as he cheered Jacob on, shouting encouragement with a voice that carried across the field. Jacob beamed every time he glanced toward the stands, as if the presence of both his mother and Marcus stitched something whole inside him. After the game, Jacob ran up, grass stains on his knees and sweat in his hair. "Did you see my goal?" he asked breathlessly. "Sure did," Marcus said, crouching to give him a high five. Fastest kick on the field. Emily watched them, something deep inside her stirring. It wasn't just admiration. It was recognition. She saw the missing piece of her son's life settling quietly into place. The walk back to the car was filled with Jacob's chatter. As they reached the parking lot, an older neighbor intercepted them. Mrs. Whitmore, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, leaned on her cane and eyed Marcus up and down. "Emily," she said crisply, "I didn't know you had company." Emily straightened, forcing composure. "This is Marcus Cole. He painted my garage." Mrs. Whitmore's lips pursed. "Ah. Well, I suppose you'll be needing all the help you can get, dear." Raising a boy without his father. Her gaze lingered on Marcus, the unspoken judgment heavy in the air. Though some kinds of help come with complications. Emily flushed, anger rising in her chest. Before she could respond, Marcus spoke, his tone polite but firm. "Mom, the only complication here is whether Jacob grows up with enough people cheering for him. That's all I care about." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more, hobbling away with a huff. Emily exhaled, tension spilling from her shoulders. She glanced at Marcus, who merely shrugged as though such encounters were routine. Gratitude swelled in her chest, not just for his words but for his calm resilience in the face of small-town prejudice. That evening, Emily found herself replaying the day as she washed dishes. Jacob had fallen asleep early, worn out from the game. His face peaceful in a way she hadn't seen in years. She dried her hands and stepped onto the porch, where Marcus sat on the steps, nursing a bottle of water. The air was cool, stars flickering faintly above. "You didn't have to come today," she said softly, leaning against the railing. "But I'm glad you did." Marcus looked up, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Your boy's got talent. Deserves to know people believe in him." He paused, studying her. "And so do you." Emily's breath caught, her heart pounding. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jacob's question echoed again in her memory. "Will you be my dad?" And she realized it wasn't just a child's wishful thinking. It was a door she was slowly, cautiously, beginning to open. The following week unfolded with a strange mixture of routine and newness. Marcus came by to check on the garage wall, though it was obvious the paint needed no further attention. Emily knew it. He knew it. But neither mentioned it. Jacob greeted him with unrestrained joy each time, tugging at his sleeve, eager to share the latest school, drawing, or soccer move he'd learned. It was as if Marcus's presence had become a natural extension of their lives. Like a chair that had always belonged in the room, but had only just been placed there. One evening, Emily found herself lingering at the kitchen counter, watching Marcus and Jacob build a makeshift fort out of couch cushions. Jacob squealed with delight as Marcus crawled inside, pretending to be a dragon guarding treasure. Emily laughed, a real laugh, not the polite ones she gave coworkers or neighbors, and the sound startled her. It had been so long since it had come freely, like a river breaking through stone. She caught Marcus glancing at her, his eyes soft, as if he understood exactly what that laugh meant. Later that night, after Jacob had gone to bed, Marcus lingered by the door. "He's a good kid," he said simply. "Smart, curious. You've done right by him." Emily's heart swelled and ached all at once. "I try," she whispered. "Some days it feels like I'm failing." "You're not failing," Marcus replied. His gaze was steady, firm, the kind of certainty she hadn't felt directed at her in years. "You're carrying more weight than most, and you're still standing. That's strength." But she blinked back sudden tears, managing only a soft, "Thank you." He gave a small nod, then slipped out into the night, leaving her with a heart that beat far too fast for comfort. But the comfort didn't last. The whispers grew louder. A neighbor across the street stopped waving. Parents at Jacob's school began offering her tight, clipped smiles instead of easy conversation. One morning, Emily overheard two mothers muttering by the playground, their voices low but their intent unmistakable. "It's one thing to hire help," one said. "It's another to entertain it." They snickered, shaking their heads. Emily drove home with her hands trembling on the wheel. That evening, she avoided Marcus's gaze, her words shorter, her smile forced. He noticed, of course. "Something wrong?" he asked quietly as Jacob darted inside to fetch a toy. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just tired." But Marcus had seen that look before, in different towns, under different circumstances. The look of someone carrying not just their own fear, but the weight of others' opinions pressing down. He didn't push her, but he didn't back away either. "If anyone's giving you trouble," he said calmly, "that's their problem. Don't let it become yours." Easier said than done, Emily thought. Yet when Jacob bounded back, clutching his toy, and Marcus knelt to listen to him with patient attention, she knew she couldn't shut the door on what was unfolding. Not for herself, and certainly not for her son. The tension came to a head when Jacob's school called. Emily was summoned to the principal's office after a classmate mocked Jacob on the playground, repeating things he'd overheard at home. "Your mom's boyfriend's a painter," the boy sneered. "My dad says people like him don't belong here." Jacob had thrown a punch, leaving the other boy in tears and himself with a stern lecture from the teacher. Emily sat across from the principal, cheeks burning with shame and anger. "He's not even my boyfriend," she protested weakly, though the words felt like a lie even as they left her mouth. "He's just helping us." The principal sighed. "Children repeat what they hear. It might help if you had a conversation with your son about boundaries." Driving home, Emily gripped the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. When she pulled into the driveway, Marcus was there, unloading supplies. Jacob leapt from the car, running to him, his small fists still clenched in frustration. "They said you don't belong," he blurted, tears brimming. "But I told them you do!" "I told them you're better than their dads." Marcus crouched, taking Jacob's shoulders gently. Hey, he said softly. "It's not about being better or worse. It's about knowing who you are. You know me. You know your mom. That's what matters. Not what other people say." Jacob sniffled, nodding slowly. Emily stood by, her throat tight, watching the way Marcus spoke with steady assurance, the way Jacob clung to his words like a lifeline. Later, after Jacob had gone inside, she turned to Marcus, her voice trembling. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The stares, the gossip, the kids repeating what their parents whisper at night." Marcus leaned against his truck, his expression calm but firm. "And what about Jacob? You heard him. He's not confused. He's not ashamed. He's proud. Maybe we should take our cue from him." Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening. "But it's so hard. Most things worth having are," Marcus said quietly. His eyes met hers, unwavering. "But if you don't want me around, say the word. I'll respect it." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken fear and longing. Finally, Emily shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't want you to go." That night, Emily sat on her porch after Jacob was asleep, staring up at the stars. When Marcus joined her, their shoulders brushed and she didn't move away. "When my husband died," she said softly, "I thought that part of me was gone forever. The part that trusted, that hoped. I buried it because it hurt too much." She drew in a shaky breath. "But then Jacob looks at you like you hung the moon, and I find myself smiling without meaning to. And it scares me, Marcus. It scares me because I don't know if I can carry another loss." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice low. "I can't promise there won't be pain. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise I won't run. I don't scare easy. And I don't walk away from people who matter." Emily turned her head, meeting his gaze. The air between them shifted, charged, fragile yet undeniable. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still. Then Jacob's voice carried faintly from his bedroom window, calling for water, breaking the moment. They both laughed softly, tension easing, but something unspoken had already taken root. In the weeks that followed, Marcus became more than a visitor. He came to dinner, helped Jacob with math homework, even fixed the squeaky back door Emily had stopped noticing. Slowly, Emily's guarded heart began to trust what was happening, though the whispers hadn't stopped. Some neighbors thawed, others hardened, but Emily found herself caring less. Each evening of laughter, each moment of Jacob's joy, made the judgment outside their walls feel smaller. One Sunday afternoon, Marcus brought Emily and Jacob to his sister's house. Denise greeted them with a booming laugh, ushering them into a home buzzing with the noise of her 3 children. Jacob fit seamlessly into the chaos, tossing a basketball with his new cousins, while Denise studied Emily with shrewd warmth. "So this is the woman who's got my brother all twisted up," she teased, nudging Marcus. Emily blushed, but Denise's smile was kind. "You're welcome here," she said simply, and for the first time, Emily felt what acceptance could look like. That night, driving home, Jacob dozed in the back seat, his head lolling against the window. Emily glanced at Marcus, her hand resting unconsciously close to his on the console. "Your family's wonderful," she murmured. "They'll be your family too, if you let them." Marcus replied quietly. Her heart skipped, fear and hope colliding. She didn't answer right away, but her hand brushed against his, and she didn't pull it back. Spring settled over the neighborhood, the air tinged with blossoms, and the sound of children playing late into the evenings. Emily found herself moving through days with a lighter step, as if the gray cloud that had hovered since her husband's death was finally lifting. Marcus was becoming a fixture, at soccer games, at family dinners, in the everyday hum of their lives. She still caught whispers, still noticed the way some neighbors pursed their lips, but each time Jacob's laughter rang through the house, the noise of judgment seemed to fade further into the background. One Saturday morning, Jacob bounded into the kitchen, hair sticking up in every direction. "Mom," he blurted, "can Marcus come to the park with us today?" He said it as though Marcus's presence was not optional but essential, like bringing a ball or packing water bottles. Emily hesitated, caught between instinctive caution and the undeniable truth that her son's joy was brighter when Marcus was near. "If he's free," she said finally. Jacob beamed, racing outside to extend the invitation. By mid-afternoon, they were at the park. Jacob darted across the field, kicking his ball, while Marcus and Emily sat side by side on a bench. For a while they simply watched, the silence between them companionable. Then Marcus spoke, his tone quiet but sure. "He's healing," he said. "You both are?" Emily blinked, caught off guard by the directness. "Healing? From the loss. From the weight of carrying it alone. I see it in the way he plays. The way you smile now." She looked down, twisting her fingers in her lap. "Sometimes I feel guilty, like moving forward is betraying the past." Marcus shook his head. "Loving what you had doesn't mean you stop living. It means you honor it by building something new." Her eyes stung, and she blinked back tears. Before she could respond, Jacob ran up, cheeks flushed. "Come play, Marcus! We need teams." Marcus grinned standing, and within moments he was chasing Jacob across the field, his laughter mingling with the boys in a sound so full it made Emily's chest ache with something dangerously close to hope. That evening, after Jacob was asleep, Emily and Marcus lingered on the porch. The night air was cool, the stars bright above. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. Searching for courage. "Marcus," she began, her voice trembling, "I need to ask you something. Do you see this as temporary? Just helping us out until—" She broke off, unable to finish. Marcus turned, his gaze steady. "Emily, I don't do temporary. Not when it comes to people who matter." The silence stretched, thick with meaning. Slowly, almost without thinking, Emily reached for his hand. He took it, his grip warm and sure. The simple act sent a shiver through her, a reminder that connection could still exist, fragile yet fierce. Days blurred into weeks, each one layering new memories. Marcus taught Jacob how to ride his bike without training wheels, jogging beside him until the boy pedaled off on his own, shrieking with triumph. He fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen, refusing to take money for it. He sat with Emily on quiet evenings, sharing stories of his army days, of the men he served with, of the lessons carved into him by hardship. She listened, fascinated, realizing how little she had known of him and how much more she wanted to learn. But not everyone was content to let their happiness grow. Emily's ex-husband Daniel called out of the blue. His voice was clipped, irritated. "I hear you've got someone new hanging around the house," he said without preamble. "A contractor. That what you're calling him?" Emily stiffened. "Daniel, you live 3 states away. What I do here is none of your concern. It is when it affects my son," Daniel snapped. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? What kind of example you're setting?" Emily's hand shook on the phone. "The kind where Jacob sees respect, kindness, and hard work. That's the example." Daniel scoffed. "Knave as ever. You're dragging him into something messy, Emily. Think about his future. People don't forget these things." When she hung up, her heart was pounding, fury and fear battling inside her. Later that night, she told Marcus about the call. He listened quietly, then said, "Let him talk. Let the neighbors whisper. At the end of the day, Jacob sees who's there for him. That's what sticks." Emily wanted to believe it. She really did. But the weight of disapproval pressed down harder now, not just from neighbors, but from the man who once shared her life. It made the fragile bloom of her new happiness feel suddenly fragile, as if a single harsh word could crush it. The breaking point came a week later when Jacob came home from school, eyes red. "Some kids said you're not my real dad," he told Marcus, voice trembling. "They said my family's weird." Marcus crouched, pulling Jacob close. "Listen to me, buddy," he said gently. "Families come in all shapes. What makes a family is love, not who looks like who. You've got more love around you than a lot of kids ever get. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Jacob sniffled, nodding, and Emily felt tears sting her own eyes. She realized then that Marcus wasn't just filling a gap. He was teaching her son resilience, pride, and strength, things no amount of whispered judgment could erase. That night, Emily found Marcus in the yard, coiling up his extension cord. She stepped close, her voice quiet but fierce. "I don't want to live in fear anymore. Not of neighbors, not of gossip, not of Daniel. I want to choose what's right for us. For Jacob." Marcus turned, his expression soft. "Then choose it." She did. Without hesitation, she leaned forward, pressing her lips to his. It was tender, trembling, filled with weeks of unspoken longing. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his chest, and for the first time in years, she felt like she had stepped into a future, instead of standing frozen in the past. But their challenges weren't over. As their relationship deepened, so did the scrutiny. Invitations from certain neighbors stopped arriving. Conversations at school pick up lines grew stiffer. Emily braced herself for every sidelong glance, every pointed silence. Yet each evening she returned home to Jacob's laughter and Marcus's steady presence, and she found the strength to keep moving forward. One Sunday, Marcus invited them both to his family's church. Emily hesitated, nervous about stepping into a space where she might stand out. But Marcus's hand in hers gave her courage, and when they arrived, Denise greeted them warmly, ushering them inside. The congregation welcomed them with open arms, Jacob joining the children's group as if he'd always belonged. Sitting beside Marcus, listening to the hymns rise, Emily felt something inside her shift. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was part of something larger, something that felt like belonging. That night, Jacob climbed into her lap, his voice sleepy but certain. "Mom," he murmured, "can Marcus be my dad for real? Not just sometimes." Emily kissed his hair, her eyes meeting Marcus's across the room. He held her gaze steady, patient, waiting. She knew the decision wasn't just about her. It was about them, about the family they were building despite the odds. And in that moment, she realized the answer had already been written in their laughter, their tears, their stubborn refusal to let the world's prejudice define them. "Yes," she whispered to her son. "Yes, he can." The weeks that followed carried the quiet certainty of a new beginning. Marcus no longer felt like a visitor. He was part of the rhythm of their days. He and Jacob built birdhouses in the yard, the boy hammering crooked nails while Marcus guided his hand with patient steadiness. Emily watched from the porch, her heart swelling as the sound of their laughter filled the air. It was a sound she hadn't thought she would ever hear again in her home. A man's voice blending with her son's in harmony. One evening, Marcus invited them to a neighborhood barbecue, hosted by one of his army friends. Emily hesitated at first, worried about how they would be received, but Marcus assured her, "These are my people," he said simply. "They'll welcome you both," and they did. Jacob ran off with the other kids, playing tag until dusk, while Emily found herself laughing easily with women she'd never met, surprised by how natural it felt. When Marcus introduced her as someone important, her cheeks flushed, but her heart soared. Later that night, as they drove home under the glow of streetlights, Jacob's voice rose from the back seat. "Marcus," he asked sleepily, "will you be my dad forever?" The question hung in the quiet car, simple and profound. Emily's breath caught, her fingers tightening on the steering wheel. Marcus turned, meeting her eyes before looking back at the boy. "If your mom's okay with it," he said gently, "then yes, I'd be honored to be your dad." "Forever?" Emily's throat closed around tears. She reached for Marcus's hand, squeezing it tightly as Jacob drifted into sleep. In that moment, she knew the whispers, the judgment, the struggles. They all faded against the strength of what they had built. Months later, on a warm summer evening, Marcus stood in their backyard, nerves thrumming beneath his calm exterior. Friends and family gathered, the scent of grilled food in the air, laughter rising with the twilight. Jacob tugged Emily toward the patio, his grin wide with mischief. "Come on, Mom," he urged. She followed, puzzled, until she turned to see Marcus drop to one knee, a small velvet box in his hand. Emily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Marcus's voice was steady, though his eyes shimmered with emotion. "Emily, you and Jacob have given me more than I ever thought I deserved. You turned my work into purpose, my days into joy, and my hope into something real. I love you both more than I can say. Will you marry me? Will you let me be the father Jacob already believes I am?" Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks as Jacob bounced beside her, chanting, "Say yes, Mom!" "Say yes." With a trembling laugh, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, certain. "Yes." The yard erupted in cheers as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Jacob launching himself into their arms. They stood together in the fading light, a family bound not by appearances or approval, but by the love they had chosen, fiercely and without apology. From that day forward, their story was no longer one of loss, but of renewal. A widowed mom who thought her heart had closed forever. A boy who longed for a father, and a man who carried strength and kindness in equal measure. They had found each other against the odds, and in the eyes of their small community, once skeptical and whispering, they became proof that love could cross barriers, heal wounds, and write new beginnings. Jacob would remember the moment for the rest of his life, the day his question was finally answered, not with hesitation, but with a promise. Yes, Marcus would be his dad, forever.